What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that I was pretty excited about because I went over the first one in a collection update. I really enjoyed it, and I thought I was mentally prepared for their second one, but no, I wasn't, because this, I think, was a lot different and pretty cool. So we are going to go over the latest offering from Cryptosis, Celestial Death. This also comes out on the 7th of March on Century Media Records. This band formed in 2020 in the Netherlands, technically, because this band was once known as Distillator, and then they changed their name. They were Distillator from 2013 to 2022. They put out 2 albums. I haven't heard them. I didn't know about this band until they were Cryptosis, which, again, I went over their first album, Bionic Swarm, in a collection update. And baseline, at least at that point, I would just call this straight up like technical progressive thrash. And then we listened to this album, which melted our brains into fucking mush. And I can't necessarily call it that. I mean, it's still progressive. It's still technical. But thrash is just one ingredient now. There are elements of black metal. There's definitely like some post-metal textures, and my God, like sci-fi fucking everything throughout this now. This was a wild listen.
Yeah, this record is crazy. I had never heard of this band. Surprise, surprise. I don't know if any of you have either, but if you have...
You're ahead of him.
My God, yeah, you're ahead of me, and... Yeah, Nick described it as progressive technical thrash, and I said, okay. And then we got this record, and I'm still beside myself. And attempting to explain this, I think for both of us, is going to be kind of nuts, because this record is insane.
Yeah. Early on, I would say, like, there, comparisons to, like, bands like Vector, Coroner, pretty accurate. But, again, this has a lot more going on in it than I expected. First off, the way this opens into a prologue called The Awakening, it feels like you're watching the opening title credits for Dune Part 3, I think. Will that be the next one we're on, I think? With Timothy Chalamet, whatever his name is. But all these synths and layers kind of get you prepared for the onslaught that hits immediately as Faceless Matter comes in, because literally it's everything all at once.
Yeah, it just explodes. Bam! Lots of layers. Lots and lots of layers. The sound is huge and dense as a collapsed star. I mean, it's gigantic, and it's everything. Everything this band has in their wheelhouse is all at once. It was crazy for me. It was just so much, and I was like, I don't even know what the hell's happening.
It's like Star Wars, when Han hits the hyperdrive and they take off, except no one's wearing seatbelts, and this time they're going right into the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's just nuts with the amount of layers on here, and production-wise, I feel like this one's a lot different than the last one. I mean, there's definitely some other differences too, but this feels like icy cold, like absolute zero dead space cold. The guitars in here have quite a unique, very crisp, just frozen sound. Like, the guitar tone sounds like it was locked in a meat locker for like 3 years and they didn't even bother unthawing it before they played it. But this first song just catapults you right into this whole album's universe. And man, it is a lot to absorb. But once it kind of settles in, the intricacies, the wild riffs on here, crazy riff changes. And, this is definitely like, tech thrash or whatever you want to call it. Like, you can definitely say it's still comparable again to like Vector and such. But this is like, I don't know, like a little bit more about like layering, counter melodies. Like, there's tons of crazy riffs in here. In fact, there's not really a lot of solos. Like, this is mostly just insane riffing on here.
Yeah, in fact, the only solo that I could actually find, and you really, there's so much going on all the time, you really gotta hone in and listen for things, or you're just straight gonna miss it. The only solo I could find is near the end of the album in the song Cryptosphere, which is one of the most wacky and amazing songs, I think, on this record, period. I don't know, that's a bold statement, because a lot of these songs are wacky, but this song is more like a death metal Iron Maiden on meth.
Yeah, I mean, everything is moving super fast. Like, the picking speed is crazy, but again, there's a lot of just crazy guitar dynamics. Counter melodies, dissonance, fucking plenty. Like, you get these heavy, icy cold strums just pretty much everywhere. but it's these crazy riff changes. The Silent Call in particular has just nuts riffs, a lot of stampeding drums, and this is the one where I really started to feel like this had a bit more black metal influence. Sci-fi black metal, it doesn't seem like it works in my head because they're supposed to be in forests and looking like pandas.
Right.
But it kind of has that sort of vibe. Like you get these icy cold tremolos, really awesome harmonies too. And behind them, you frequently get like synth passages and a very raspy, very dry sounding vocal delivery. Like it has a lot of qualities of black metal, but again, this frequent riff change stuff on here. These songs stay like absolutely propelled at all times. In fact, there's very few moments on here where you get a breather. In fact, I'd say you have to wait for Motionless Balance, which is pretty much the halfway point of the album, which is a nice, giant synthy interlude that builds in tension and feels like you're landing on Mars and it's not like a desolate fucking orange desert. Like there's aliens there that want to teach you the secrets of the world and then they realize, oh, you're human. Oh, you should leave. The atmosphere of this album is absolutely insane. Like this is, again, like cold, but it's very lush. The synths in here, I think, are really well placed. They have this big sci-fi sort of sound to them. Occasionally you get some stuff that is a little bit more gothic, which I thought was kind of interesting. There's a couple of songs on here that kind of reminded me of like Tribulation a little bit, but not like the most recent Tribulation, like the previous albums, like I would say like the two before it. Ascending in particular has this galloping, just kind of classic heavy metal rhythm to it. Like a very Nico sort of rhythm, except, faster, more aggro. And you get these really like cool like interplay riffs. Like you have this constant buzzing tremolo with a really cool harmonized tag on it and just like some straightforward strumming. But this is like honestly like one of the hookiest songs on here. There's almost like a goth rock sort of hook on the chorus.
And my actual favorite part of that song is the bridge. It's got a bossa nova groove. I really dug that because it's something really weird. I saw this band compared to Voivod, and I didn't initially get that. But when you get down to songs like Ascending or In Between Realities, which I'm going to get into more here in a minute, you do kind of get that Voivod feel, both for the weirdness and for the constant like weird changes. And all of the syncopation on this record is on a dime, and it's crazy because it comes at Mach 10 speed, like double the speed of light, since we're traveling in space here. And although the guitars do propel a lot of this, a lot of it is also propelled by the drum work, which is pretty crazy at all times. Whether it's a straightforward double kick, double time groove, or these really neat, like off-time pattern shifts. The drummer reminds me, at least in the more groovy moments, a lot of Matt Halpern from Periphery. None of the rest of this sounds like Periphery, like none of it at all. But the drum work does for sure. Packed full of ghost notes and these really cool stutter grooves. Just at all times, I really enjoyed the drum work on this record.
And the syncopation with the riffs, again, crazy. And the riff complexity, like that's the thing that I really liked about this. And it's not like a traditional like techie thrash stuff like that. There's definitely some moments that remind you of like Watchtower or like Hemotoxin, bands like that. But a lot of this, again, it's very cold and very icy, and I feel like it's kind of gravitating more towards like, like progressive metal at times. But again, like with a blackened tinge, like there were a couple of points in here where it kind of reminded me of Enslaved, just a very, very, very active Enslaved. But some of these riffs and like repeated riffs that go throughout these entire songs are almost as complex as like lead melodies. They're very intricate. They're played at like Mach 10. There's a lot of like just clever shifts in them. Like it's like just very busy for just like a standard riff. Static Horizon, Cryptosphere in particular, my God, those riff changes are absolutely nuts on that. And Reign of Infinite, the longest track on this album, which is just insane. Like the fast as hell picking on that one, lots of cool stutter grooves. And again, the band's transitions, all this is smooth despite everything kind of coming at you at like, Mach 10. But it's not so complex where it becomes like too heady or too hard to get into. And it doesn't forget the love of riffs and specifically melody. While the melodies are, often very cold and very distant, they layer them in such awesome ways. The song Absent Presence, one of the slower cuts on here, doesn't stay slow for that long. It's more of a mid-tempo groove. It kind of locks onto one particular riff, but it keeps building around it with these like swirling melodies. The synths are like kind of orbiting around the song, I guess. I don't know, that sounds sci-fi. But it steadily builds in intensity. Towards the end, it's like getting much faster. And this is where you hear like some of these just amazing tremolo harmonies. It's huge. It's layered. And this is a fucking three-piece.
Yep. Yeah, vast atmosphere is what I would describe this record at all times. But Absent Presence specifically, when you get into the bridge of that song, it is huge, which is crazy for a three-piece band. I also really like the atonal dissonant riffs that are in that song. Absent Presence and again in the Silent Call. Those are both moments where those riffs are actually pretty heavy. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call this record heavy as far as riffing is concerned, although once again there are some wild riffs. But those two songs, the Silent Call and Absent Presence, do have heavier riffs in them. The comparison I would make to call this heavy would be scope of this album. That's what makes it heavy.
I'd say it's probably also heavy in like concept too. Like, I don't know. I was trying to follow some of the vocal phrasing on here and some of the words, but I was lost in the cosmic riff storm that we kind of got launched into. Like, this album does have like a really cool flow. Like, track to track, I feel like it keeps getting like more intense, more layers, more, atmosphere gets kind of revealed to you. And some of the stuff that I was expecting, from this band based on their first album was more towards the back half. But I don't know, like the whole vibe of this album, I mean, I brought up the hyperspace thing, but I don't know, I feel like this is like someone like drunk driving the fucking Enterprise, just going warp speed everywhere. Like, man, I hope we don't fuck up and land in a planet or a star. They're totally going to take my license. But towards the end of this album, with In Between Realities and Cryptosphere, that was the sound I was kind of expecting. Those songs are a little bit more thrash oriented. There's a lot of thrash that is kind of like buried in here, but it kind of alternates between like, like proggy, like atonal, dissonant stuff. And again, a fair amount of black metal, but purely thrash riffs. Like, there were definitely some on Stack Horizon, but the two big ones on here were In Between Realities and Cryptosphere. And they kind of make up for whatever thrash you think was kind of missing on those. Machine gun riffs, some of the like nastiest breakdown rhythms on here. Like, those songs are legit heavy, they're chuggier, they're meaner, but they still do a lot of the cool proggy stuff too. And honestly, those are the two songs that I really actually noticed more in the way of like lead work. Like, a lot of this is just like guitar layering. You'll have two different guitar lines that are kind of like doing a counter melody or maybe like a lead melody, but these actually had some solos on it and they were pretty ripping. I have to say, this album isn't like super long too. Like, we're talking about all these songs with all the busy transitions and riffs. The longest song on here is still under 6 minutes. All of this is very condensed down, but again, the transitions, they flow well. They repeat a lot of like catchy riffs. So it isn't just like a techie blitz of just absolute noodly fuckery all the time. It's a lot of just like intricate, cool songwriting. And honestly, with this production on here, it's cool to be able to hear like pretty much every nuance. This was mixed by Frederick Folcaire of Unleashed and mastered by Tony Lindgren, who's worked with a ton of people. And this just has this very crisp sound where you can make out pretty much every layer. The synths kind of initially sounded a bit loud, but honestly, I kind of like where they sit in the mix because whenever they show up, they just add more epic to the songs.
Yeah, there were some moments in the beginning where I thought they needed to turn those synths down a little bit, but once your ear acclimates to that and you get used to it, they do appear in really cool moments, and they are layered upon layered upon layered, which again adds to that vast sound. But the overall mix has the like right amount of compression on it to be able to pretty much hear everything, which again is insane because this is a three-piece. I am still blown away by that.
And despite this being like, again, just a blitz of just insanity at times, but again, very accessible insanity. Like, you could still process it. But despite that, I like the fact that the last track, Coda, Wander Into the Light, is kind of the big cool down and honestly one of the prettiest songs on the entire album. It's slow, it's very lush, there's a beautiful lead harmony playing, and it kind of has this big synthy swell towards the end where the synths just kind of take over everything, but you can still hear that melody. And the thing that I thought about, almost as soon as that one came on, is like, we finally made it through this journey. Oh, look, there's a space station up there. The Devon Townsend International Space Station. because honestly, this kind of sounds like it could have been on like Ziltoid the Omniscient and totally would have fit in. It was a good way to cool down this album because, again, everything else was just nuts, but again, very engaging. Like, this was not what I expected from this band. And this probably was less what he expected because he didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you said progressive technical thrash, and I said, cool. But man, this was so much more than that, and so much not thrash for a majority of it. There are thrashy moments. The crazy riff in Static Horizon, I'm telling you, like, it sounds like the middle of a lead. Like when the lead picks up the pace and just going nuts, but that is the entire riff of the song, and it goes nonstop. It's always going. As far as any negatives are concerned, again, I did have a gripe in the beginning about the volume of the synths. I just thought they were a little loud at times, but once you kind of get more into this record and kind of understand a little bit more of what's going on, I say understand loosely because I'm actually going to probably listen to this several more times.
Same.
But like once you get into the middle of it, you're like, that's not so bad, and it is used pretty nicely, and beyond that, I don't really have any complaints.
I can't really think of any. Like, honestly, yeah, my expectations were kind of blown away with this one because this was kind of vastly different than the first one. I mean, they definitely share some common ground, but I feel like this is just going in like several different directions, but it works. And honestly, overall, I'm going to give this 4.5 stars. I am incredibly impressed with this. I feel like this band is really branching out their sound. Like, this became difficult to compare this to other bands.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you could pull apart like sections of songs that sound like, you know, Vector, Voivod, Tribulation, Enslaved, fucking Nocturnus,
Decapitated,
stuff like that. But overall, the entire sound, I really feel like is kind of theirs now.
Yeah.
The inclusion of more like black metal riffs on here too, because, you know, I do think Distance was a big part of the first one, but it wasn't employed the same. And I just like this icy cold sort of production on here. Like, this feels frosty, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like, I don't know, like shrill or anything like that. Like, everything just sounds nice, even though it's chaotic and just coming at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour. The songs still find a way to be really hooky. They're good about repeating solid riffs. And again, it's not like noodly wankery or anything like that. This is like just clever songwriting. If you're a big fan of, I would suppose, like any of the bands we mentioned, because you'll find elements of them in every one of these songs. Just check this album out. This thing is absolutely wild.
I'm going to go ahead and give this record a 4. I need some more time with it. It is a very solid 4, though. I agree with what you said. It's very hard to nail down what exactly this sounds like. In fact, we were probably 3 or 4 songs in before I started making comparisons to other bands, and even then, it's not a full comparison to any of those bands. It's an amalgamation of a ton of stuff. There's a lot going on all the time. It is really weird, but very entertaining. A lot of these songs, regardless of how they start, they all explode. You get very minimal building as far as like an intro is concerned. Like, you get a little bit of synth sometimes, but for the most part, it's just bam, right in your face. And it doesn't slow down, and you have to actually pick apart what's going on to attempt to understand it. And every time I started to pick a song apart, it would change, but what it changed to was also really cool. The production, I think, for what's going on here is perfect, and it just, at all times, I was just spent like scratching my head going, that was neat. Holy shit, that was cool. The riffing is insane. The speed is insane. Like, there's a whole lot to pick apart here. But yeah, if you're a fan of any of the bands we've listed, and again, trust me, they're kind of loose comparisons because this band has a very unique sound. If you're into any of that, check this out, but I guarantee you're going to be entertained.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and we offer a members-only live stream as our lone perk, which we will be doing one probably Wednesday night. We will let you know what time and what we're going to talk about. I mean, honestly, it'll probably be just like a loose chat where we just talk about silly shit, because we're kind of good at that.
Yeah, I would say that's our strong point.
But memberships are the main way to support the channel. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our t-shirts and hats. That is linked down below in the video description. And of course, if you'd like to become a member of this thing, there's a join button down there for you to smash, spit on, headbutt. I don't know how you do things, but, as long as you make contact with it, it should go off.
Headbutt our join button.
That sounds dirty.
It does. But that's how you should do it. Headbutt our join button. Or don't. You don't have to listen to me. You guys don't even have to join. We're just thankful that you're here. We just always want to say thank you to all of our fans who keep watching us and keep supporting this channel. It means the world to us. Tons of content coming your way. Album reviews, discography rankings. You also get a booger troll. Who the hell is going to give you a booger troll besides us? You get that. Tons of discussion forums. We've got some really cool stuff planned. Multiple segments. States of metal. Is it metal? Is it not metal? Nick's never-ending collection updates. Just tons of metal all the time. That's what we do. But once again, thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Tons of content coming your way. So one more big thank you because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.